but there's different levels of financial freedom, right? So the
Yeah.
first one, which I think is the most important one, is your rat race number. So again, I was making 200K a year doing medical sales, but it was hard to get to where I was going to replace that income initially. So I thought, well, the first number is what are my living expenses? One is there's two ways to make more. One is you spend less or you make more. And so I figured, okay,
Yep.
for me, if I had, it was around 60 or 70K a year, I could live off of that. It was enough that I live pretty simply, and I have a little bit of travel, but I can live pretty simply. I don't need a ton to live
Yeah.
off of.
Yeah. Well, welcome back to another episode of Lessons into Blessings. I'm your host, Tari Thomas, and I am excited today to welcome Bronson Hill to the show. He's the CEO of Bronson Equity. He helps a lot of people just to learn how to passive invest, replace their income with passive streams of income. He's been syndicating in all sorts of different type of diverse asset classes and has really scaled in 5 years from raising just from 100K to like 35 million. So there is so much we're going to be able to take away from our guest today. So welcome to the show, Bronson Hill.
Really excited to be here, and it's like I was saying, it's been a while since we saw each other in person in Phoenix at that conference.
Yeah. So
Great
I think
lessons,
a couple
too.
years ago or so, right? And
Yeah.
I think so. Just to kind of bring people up, like it was my first multifamily conference and my first time really getting a picture of syndication. I had in my business, I do a lot of co-living spaces and things like that. And I was like, hey, I really got to start owning these asset class. I got to raise money to like own stuff. And I didn't really, I heard of syndication, but I didn't really understand it in completeness. And at that conference, it was like the lights came on. And when you got up to speak and you talked about, I think at that time it was like your first deal was like 100K and you'd raised 11 million or something to that nature. And like, fast forward two or so years later, and man, you're in the 35 million plus space, right? So that's amazing. That's amazing. And I'm glad to have you on the show because you were one of the people who actually kind of like, yeah, I want to be where he is. So
Really excited to be here, and thanks for I just love what you're creating too with your own life. It's just amazing, when we take control of our finances and we start to learn and we start to get involved. It's just the growth that happens is awesome. And so to watch what
yeah,
you're doing with people like you, it's just
absolutely.
amazing.
So for the people, just to show like where you were, I know in 5 years you've seen some really explosive growth. What was that? I know you were in medical sales. I know you're formerly a minister. I mean, you've got like a very diverse background.
Yeah.
And so what was that kind of turning point? If you could take us back to an event or a moment where it was like, okay, something has to shift and real estate's that vehicle. What was the kind of that shift for you in
Yeah.
your life?
Well, I think for me, I'd wanted to try to find a way. This is when I was in medical sales. I thought, I want to try to find a way to start a business or do something where I don't have to go work for somebody else. 'Cause we've all probably had bosses we just don't like. And it's kind of
Right.
50-50. We had a great boss, you got a terrible boss. And it's kind of like hit or miss. You just don't know. And
Yeah.
some are okay.
Toss the coin.
Yeah, exactly. And so, especially in sales, there's just a lot of high pressure people that you're only as good as your last sale. And so, I would take every Friday. This was probably like 10 years ago. I'd take every Friday and just try to think of different business ideas and try to learn. And then I got a
Yeah.
hold of this like options trading strategy, which is basically an advanced strategy of if stocks go up, you got to. The challenge with stock options, you have to be right in two places. You've got to be right on direction and timing. And so, it's not only because these things expire. And so I found the strategy. I was making money doing it. I made
Yeah.
maybe 20K over a few months. And then I talk about this in my book. I ended up losing 70K in one day. My net worth was about 200K. So it was like a really painful
Yeah, that's
loss.
painful.
Really painful. And I think what I learned from that is a number of things. Just the longer I've been investing, the more I realize even great investors sometimes will have losses, but
Yeah,
it's not a waste if you learn something. And what I learned that day
absolutely.
is that I'm not a great options trader. Like I have other gifts, other things I'm good at.
Right.
I'm good at
Right.
raising money. I'm good at analyzing deals, but that's just a certain type of person. There's not a lot of people that really do options trading for a long time and make lots and lots of money. And
Yeah.
so, I think it's just the more you learn, Brian Tracy says if you want to earn more, you got to learn more. So it's just being able to just increase your learning, to try different things. And it could be going to conferences and reading books. It could just be talking to investors that you meet. And so like you and I had a
Yeah.
great conversation a while ago. And so talking with people and finding what they're doing. And the more I've done this, the more I've learned there's things, beyond real estate that are, ATM machines and car washes and oil and gas and other gold and silver. And there's just different things that are out there that are like, oh, I didn't even know this was a thing, right? I didn't know people
Yeah,
invested in this.
exactly.
It's interesting just to learn and to continue to grow.
Yeah, no, that's an awesome thing, and I've learned a lot just by hearing some of your deals, and just like, wow, that mean that it's such a wide open space. But I think there's some traditional real estate spaces like multifamily that gets people kind of on that good ground level, gets some understanding, kind of the world of syndication and the world of kind of passive investing. Um, and I know you raise a lot for that space, so for you, what do you believe was the mindset that kind of helped you that kind of helped you transform from like I can only raise a little bit amount or can I even raise it all versus like man, I'm raising millions to take down really large assets or invest in big, big deals.
Yeah, I think there's been a number of things along the way. I mean, I think it's not just one thing, that
Yeah.
you do. I had a conversation with somebody earlier today that like if you have two people and one has great theories and great plans and just is a great strategist, and the second person is not a great strategist, but they just take action and they just keep going for it, the
Yeah.
action person will always win. So sometimes we
Yeah.
think we've got to have it all. We go, oh, I
That's
got a plan, I got
real.
it all squared away. It's just you just start
Yeah.
taking action and you keep taking actions, and as long as you keep have some moments of reflection and be like, oh, is this working? Is this not working? Some people take action and they never readjust. But as long as
Yeah.
you just have those readjustments and you keep going, you're going to get there. And so for me,
Yeah.
I started with doing webinars, and that was pretty successful because I invite different guests, and I do these monthly webinars, and we'll get the other influencers to invite their people as well, and then we kind of everybody kind of grows that way. And then I started a podcast later, the Mailbox Money Show, and then I recently wrote a book. So there's just different things you do, and you keep trying different things. And I think it's like with anything, if you have a goal, as long as you commit to it and you're willing to put in the work, it doesn't really matter how long it takes, right? You just
Yeah.
continue. And it's not always even. It's not like a linear, like, oh, I raised this much.
For
It's just a
sure.
straight line.
For
It's like
sure. For
people are like,
sure.
oh, it's here, and then it's down. And so it kind of goes up and down, but you just kind of keep
Yeah.
learning and growing, and you become a different person. And I think that's the part that I find most exciting is not just the growth in wealth, but it's the growth in who you are.
Yeah.
Being wealthy is not you have money; it's the person that you are. It's the way
Yeah.
you carry yourself. That's why a lot of lottery winners they become wealthy, but only 11% say that they're happier. 5 years later, or a number of years later, it's a very small
Yeah.
percentage. Actually, most of them go bankrupt, right? Because they didn't earn it. They know they didn't earn
Yeah.
it, right? And
Yeah.
so I think it's really developing yourself is how you get there.
Yeah, and it's funny because you have the B, which is the acronym for your company, Bronson Equity. But the funny part is it's a part of being. It's a learning how to believe and become who you know you can be. And it's all of your actions and your doing and your thinking then aligns to that, right? And so I think a lot of that is the being part, right? And at
Yeah,
some point, maybe it was I love a part in your book because I have read I haven't gotten through all of it, but I've listened to most of it. And there's a part of your book that talks about your network. I'm gonna quote it so I don't jack it up. How you treat your network influences how you grow your net worth. And
yeah.
so, how do you believe your network has transformed, kind of as we're talking about being, about helping you to become stronger at being able to not only raise funds, but to really analyze and look and be able to see good investments when they come.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, the BE, that was a good choice. Bronson Equity, you be who you want. But it's. I think there's a saying: you're the average of the five people you spend the most time with.
Yeah.
Getting in the and that's in every area. If you want to improve your spirituality or your health or your your wealth or anything, it's just you. I can look around at your life or my life or other people's, and you can see if you're who are you hanging out with, who are the people that you're spending time with, who people are on the phone with, and it really starts to become who you are. So I think that was a big fast track. And as I've joined several masterminds, and you pay a lot of money, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars to join groups and things like this. But what it does is um, it just gets you thinking differently because people that are successful, it's been said that success leaves clues, right? So it's just like
Yeah.
there's always And I want to be in a room that people are doing 10x or 100x of what I'm doing, right? Because that's going to help
Absolutely.
me to grow, and I
Yeah.
can, be there and be helpful and things like that, and it just opens up doors. And so,
Yeah.
I think it's the challenge. Some people look at the cost of an event, they look at a cost of a mastermind, they look at a cost of getting around amazing people, but a lot of times it's really it's a small cost compared to what you get out of it. So I think
Yeah.
that's been a huge growth factor, and I think just continuing to read and learn. I mean, it's really the two things. You mentioned networking, and then education is the other one. So I think of this year, it's we're into December. I've read 85 books this year. Then my goal was 80, so
Wow.
I keep trying to
Wow.
read more. And it's
Wow. You must have that speed on like 3x.
I do listen, and some of them they are 3x. Um, like when I'm on a run, or like I'll go on a run later, I'll listen to some stuff while I'm running, or I'll get in the
Yeah.
car and I'll listen to some stuff, or I'll
That's
sit and I'll read
awesome.
for a while. And it's just that's how we, and there's another quote. I'm a quote guy, if you can't tell, but there's a saying that you'll be the same person 5 years from now, except for the books you read and the people that you meet. And so that's
Yeah.
just networking and education. It's just who are you
Yeah.
meeting and what
Yeah.
are you learning. And so those
Yeah.
are the things that really help you to get to the next level.
Good. That's really, really good. Um, let's jump into your book, Fire Yourself, which I think most of us would love to be able to do.
Yeah.
And you were able to do. How long did it take you to fire yourself?
I made a goal to try to do it in 3 years, and I did it in just under 3 years. And so
Okay.
I'm really grateful for that. But yeah, it's been about 2.5 years now. And yeah, it's been great. I actually was sitting right at this. I'm sitting at my living room table, and I was sitting here about 2 or 3 months after I left my job.
Yeah.
And I pictured myself getting a call from my sales manager saying, "Hey, how many more widgets are you going to sell for this quarter or whatever?" And what came out of my mouth was, "Thank God I'm not doing that job anymore." So
Right. Right.
good job.
Right.
I haven't had any moments where I'm like, I really wanted to go back. I mean, it is a little different working like remotely and kind of working on your own and not being, going and meeting people. And it was a lot of extrovert time, which I
For
enjoyed.
sure.
But I love being able to. I just got back from New Zealand. It was my sixth international trip of the
I
year.
love it.
Being able to write the book, doing things that like would be much harder to do if I were working a job.
Yep. Absolutely. And so, yeah, that is the kind of the I guess the subtitle of your book is just how to pretty much replace your income in 3 years, right? Through
Yeah,
passive investing. So take us through that. Like, how did you kind of do it in 3 years, and how do
yeah,
you kind of recommend people to really be successful at become replacing their income in a short time frame? And it maybe
yeah.
not be 3 years, maybe it's 5 years, maybe it's 6 years. Like, everybody's goal is different and what they can do is different. But take us on a journey of just like the steps to create that.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple things, and again, there's kind of two different types of people. Some people
Yeah.
are, have more time than they have money. I was in that case where I had more time than I don't have a lot of time, but I made time. And then,
Yeah.
or some people have more money. Some people are like, hey, I've got a net worth of a couple million or more, and I want to figure out how do I leave my job or my business and still get income. And so
Yeah.
that's the thing of that's a muscle about developing passive income. Of
Yeah.
how do I start working that out? And a lot of it just starts by doing research and learning and going to meetups and things. So the biggest thing I found is a lot of people think, and this is going to contradict my subtitle here about replacing your income, but there's different levels of financial freedom, right? So the
Yeah.
first one, which I think is the most important one, is your rat race number. So again, I was making 200K a year doing medical sales, but it was hard to get to where I was going to replace that income initially. So I thought, well, the first number is what are my living expenses? One is there's two ways to make more. One is you spend less or you make more. And so I figured, okay,
Yeah.
for me, if I had it was around 60 or 70K a year, I could live off of that. It was enough that I live pretty simply, and I have a little bit of travel, but I can live pretty simply. I don't need a ton to live
Yeah.
off of.
Yeah.
So I found whatever that number was, and it was less than my actual income number. But I realized if I could cover that number, then that was my rat race. So I was able to I could stop working and have enough income coming in. And so whether
Yeah.
that was
And the
active,
rat race number, just for, those that like don't understand what the heck that is the number to replace your income essentially,
oh,
or
it's
the
actually it's
expenses,
a number
or
to
what?
replace your expenses. It's expenses.
Yep.
So again,
Yep.
income can be much harder for some people because
Yeah.
if it's 200K a year, that's what like 16K or 18K. It's a lot
Yeah.
per month
For sure.
versus 5 or 6K a month. So again,
Right.
but once you cover your living expenses, you have a choice if you want to go to work or not. Because you
For
could not
sure.
go to work, have that number covered, and you're okay. Now,
Yep.
again,
There
I'm
you
not saying
go.
you stop there, but you can. But once
Absolutely.
you identify what that number is, then
Yep.
you can say, okay, what do I need to get there? And so
Yeah.
like, there are investments that I know that are, and I've had a huge preference for cash flow investments over making a lot of money someday and appreciation. Cash flow investments allow you to leave your job and allow you to cover, expenses like your mortgage or your rental, your payment, your car, your insurance, whatever, those kind of things. So basically what I did is I just started to, I mean, my own story is I started to raise money. I started a local meetup. I know you run a meetup as well in Phoenix, or
Yeah.
your meetup. And I found my first investor there at the first meeting where we raised 100K from him for somebody else who had a deal. And then I found a partner who was really successful. And I just kind of approached him and said, "Hey, how's it going raising money for you? Whatever." And they were having some trouble. So I came on board to help raise money. And we raised together. I went from raising 100K to basically raising around 15 million over the next 18 months, just
Wow.
by taking, like he had a huge platform. And I just basically was there to help, answer calls and try to, get people on board. So I had 1,000 one-on-one phone calls over the next 18 months. So kind of what I did is I just kind of found an opportunity. There's another quote I love that says, "Make yourself valuable to valuable people." That's all.
Absolutely.
So if you find people
Absolutely.
doing big things, if you can just say, "Hey, is there anything I can do to help this person? Anything I can do to like come on board and kind of help this person out?" And it's stuff that
Yeah.
I still do. I still try to go to people in my network that are way more successful. I try to think of, is there any way that I can provide value? Anything I can do that
Yeah.
can open up doors for them? Or can I come
Yeah.
on board to help with this type of thing? And that stuff's really valuable.
That's really good, because one of the things I always tell people is like, figure out, when we talk about assets, a lot of times people think, oh, I got to own a lot of houses, I got to have a lot of cash in the bank, my 401k. I think everything that's accessible to you, right? And so you're talking about skill sets, my time. What are the things that I can add value to someone else to be able to grow income, right? And
Yeah.
so how do you find your skill set? I mean, you may have known like, hey, look, I was in medical sales, I can do this all day long, right? And so I love when people tap into the things that they're already naturally good at. It may be something that's a purpose driven thing or just a skill set thing. And how do you help people to kind of help them find that niche to kind of start to grow that cash flow? Because like you said, some people have lots of money, some people have lots of time, or some people have skill sets and they can do certain things that are going to plug the gap and plug the hole. But I love some of the things you just said.
Yeah, yeah. I think in the book it's a little more geared toward passive investors that I had so many calls with high net worth people that, I think of the doctor who's got a net worth of 5 million and owns his own practice and only done stocks and bonds. Well, those don't typically provide income. A lot of times there's more risk with them, which we've seen in the last couple of years. But this is stuff that a lot of times people, everything seems weird and everything seems impossible until you start. And so that's why when
Yeah.
you get involved, you start going to meetups, maybe somebody invests in their first deal. So like for that guy who has a $5 million net worth, once he invests in his first deal, he gets some experience in how that works.
Yeah.
And, the deal could go great. It could go okay, go down as well. However it goes, he's going to learn. And so I
Yeah.
think the biggest thing we invest in is our own education. And it allows us to really learn, okay, where do I want to go? Where do I want to be? Because I think if you do things, and this is something that a little bit of my background, I was an investment advisor for a few years on the
Okay.
side of the medical device. I was doing that, and I was what's called an RIA, or a registered investment advisor. Well, I'm
Yeah.
still an RIA, but it's a recovering investment advisor, right? So I'm not registered, I'm recovering,
Understood.
because Wall Street's just not out there to really help people. And most people that
Yeah.
become really wealthy, it's not through the method. It's not that just simply I'm just going to buy and hold this stuff over there. Some people do. I mean, there are people that do it, but it's very rare. It's
Yeah.
typically that people that double down on themselves, they do it with their business, they invest in different things. And so there are different types of investments. There's investments that are cash flow investments. There are investments that are more appreciation. There are ones that are super high, 10 to 100x type potential returns. And there's just different types of deals out there, which are really interesting. So it's
Yeah.
it's all, great. But I think the biggest thing people can do is just start moving towards getting into local meetups, learning about deals,
Yeah.
listening to shows like yours. And that's really how people grow.
Yeah. I think you nailed it, and just getting in the room, right? And there's so many different ways to get in the room. It doesn't have to be a physical room. It could be a virtual room. It could be, getting on LinkedIn and finding different people and lining up and making calls. And I think when you're hungry enough, you'll find it. You'll tap into kind of that space. So it sounds like you got into the right room, found the right partners, and that was like really critical. How did that I know you're kind of you say this quote, and so I don't know if it's your quote or some. Multifamily is the gateway drug
Yeah.
to other investments. So I think a lot of people know the reasons, and if not, let's recap it really quickly. Why we love multifamily, and then we're gonna go like, okay, if that's the gateway, woo, there's higher highs, right? So why
Yeah.
do we love multifamily?
Well, multifamily is amazing because for a lot of reasons. One is that you get to use leverage, so you don't put
Yep,
100% down. You get to put, 20% down, and if you have a 20% increase in the value of a property, the equity hasn't gone up by 20%; it's doubled,
yep,
right? So you get to
yep,
use leverage. You
yep.
get a lot of tax benefits. You either get to defer or eliminate taxes, which is amazing. You have, typically cash flow. There's a value add approach you can have in certain deals, which is great. There's lots of benefits. And then right now, over the last 10 years in the US, we have a significant shortage of housing units. So depending on which article you look at, it's usually between 3 and 8 million apartment units short or housing units
Yep.
short. So we know in certain markets there's just an incredible demand for more housing. And
Yeah.
so I think these are some reasons. I mean, there's also an inflation hedge. Usually rents and inflation go hand in hand.
Yep.
And I mean, there's many, but I think those are a few. And I think it's a very understandable asset for a lot of people. People
Yeah,
like
it
own
is.
a house and they can say, "Oh, I understand an apartment and the rent comes in." It's just a very easy thing to grasp. And once you kind of
Yeah.
get your head around it, then you can carry that to other assets and feel like, okay, well, I understand what's the general return, what's the IRR, what's the what are the risks here, what are the things that could happen, what are the
For
just
sure.
once you kind of have some experience with it, it does open the door to other things, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. And so you talked about some of those kind of different spaces, car washes and I think oil and gas. You've been in a little bit of probably everything, self-storage, things like that. If someone was saying, "Hey, I want to get into the passive income space," and they have a lot of time, but they don't have all of the money, right? And maybe they're sitting on about 100 grand or 50 grand to invest. How would you kind of start them down? Like, hey, we want more cash flow. Cause I think every investment, multifamily or whether it's car wash or self-storage or whatever, it may be, hey, this is a greater cash flow deal. I'm interested in more cash flow versus I'm interested in appreciation. I have a 401k that I can pull from, and I don't really care about the monthly distributions. I really just want to hit a certain number from a retirement standpoint. How would you might possibly direct them? And obviously, we're not giving any investing advice on this show. We make that disclaimer.
Yeah.
But just from a cash flow versus appreciation, what do you think people should possibly consider if they were looking for cash flow versus appreciation?
Well, I've kind of changed on this a little bit. I used to be, and I ask all investors, I say, well, what's more important, cash flow or appreciation? It's kind of split a little bit. I am such a big proponent of cash flow for the reasons I
Me
mentioned
too, for
before, that
sure.
you can cover expenses. Now, if it's retirement, I still like cash flow, and the reason why is because then there's money in your account that you then can go reinvest, and it actually
Right.
reduces your basis in a deal. So the
Yeah.
risk actually starts to get reduced the more money you get back. So I
Yeah.
like that. But we do some things that are, we have a development project we're getting ready to do. We've got other things that are a little more risky where it's much higher upside. So we do that stuff as well. It's just I think so. Let's say if somebody has 50 or 100K, I think it depends on really what their goals are. If somebody wants to be more passive, which a lot of people do, then I would just get a whole different operators and say I'm going to try to find 5 different groups operating deals. I know you guys are doing deals, we're doing deals, different groups are doing deals, and just learn about it and then invest in one and give yourself a time frame. Like in the next 30 days, I'm going to invest in one, right? Or I'm going to
Yeah.
find something to invest in like 60 days.
Yeah.
And so that's a great approach. And then, or if somebody wants to be more active, this is actually kind of a unique approach. I haven't really heard anybody talk about this, but I think it's a great way to do it. If you have 50 or 100K, you're interested in being active a little bit or doing, raising money, or usually it's either raising money or finding deals is kind of how people start. But
Yeah.
maybe you have 50K and you decide you're gonna, hey, I'm gonna try to raise money for this deal. You can put your 50K in a deal, and then you can just kind of low key send it to your friends and family to say, hey, John, I was thinking about you and I'm invested in this deal. I thought you might be interested as well. Right. So you're not saying like, hey, I'm raising, it's just kind of like hey, I'm
Right.
doing this. Maybe you'd be interested also. Right. And then
Yeah.
it's kind of a friend thing. And maybe you'll raise a little bit more
Yeah.
money, but
Absolutely.
it's just the hardest part in this, doing big deals or multifamily. The hardest part is just going from 0 to 1. It's getting your first deal done. That's the hardest
Yep.
part. And then once
Yeah.
you get it done, doors start to open. right? So
Yeah.
if you can just find a side door in like that, where you're like, okay, hey, I'm going to put a little money in. I'm going to bring a couple other people and bring some money. Maybe you didn't get to 500,000 like they want, but you got whatever you could, and you became
Yeah.
a little partner on a deal. That's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I like the just get started, get your foot in the door. Even for me, just, working, there's smaller multifamily deals that I said, hey, guys, if you want to invest from a debt equity standpoint, which from a debt equity, if people don't know, like that's you might be giving someone a note, they might be in first position on a loan, and they're loaning you money to be able to take down assets. And so that's another way. It's like it's kind of a inroad to maybe syndication, and getting people involved in your deals, where they're the passive person. They're loaning you some of the funds to be able to take down and rehab certain deals, and possibly getting in. I like that you said, maybe you do start active to where you can kind of roll enough income to be able to start to invest passively. And then also, we can't ignore the tapping into the 401k, which is sometimes so underused and underutilized. And people are sitting there, the 401ks are they're not even thinking about it. They're not actively watching what their money is doing in a lot of those custodian vehicles. And so it could be, gaining a certain percentage of return every year. So
Yeah, yeah. It's a big thing. Start small, and that's where, it's you just think of anything you did for the first time. It was always hard. My daughter recently learned how to ski, a couple years ago, and then the first
yeah,
time we went up, like we're doing the bunny slope, and I said, we're gonna go to the top. We're going to the top of this lift, whatever. And she's up there. She gets to the top, and then she starts crying. She doesn't want to come down, and and it's like that's kind of how we are sometimes. Anything in the first
right.
time is always a little tough, and now she loves it. Like she loves skiing, and we're going a
That's
bunch this year
awesome.
hopefully, and it's a little hard in Phoenix, Arizona to do the
Well, we got something 2 hours up north. It's not Colorado, but it gets the job done. At a
yeah,
small scale.
yeah, exactly. I think that's what life is about. It's about learning, it's about growth, and again, it's just that's how people make more money as they just continue to learn, and they'll learn the
Yeah,
pitfalls, they'll learn
yeah,
from other people, they'll learn from reading books and other things, and investing and getting experience doing it, because it's very different. If you've ever done, like, one thing I did when I first started doing stock trading is I would like paper trade, where you like write down what you're going to buy and sell, whatever. But it was totally different if you had paper trade versus you had some money in it, because then you'd be
yeah.
paying attention, right? So when you're invested in something, or I'm invested in something, I pay attention to what's happening, pay attention to the process and what I'm learning. It's really valuable process for sure.
No, I love it. I love it. I have one other item that you talk a lot about inflation and a hedge against inflation, and going from utilize don't let your cash essentially sit in the bank and go negative, right? Because
Right.
inflation's happening at a faster rate than your money's making money in a bank. So going from cash to assets to cash flow, and so utilizing that cash to put it in assets to make the cash flow for you. Otherwise, your cash is just sitting there. Talk to a little bit about that concept, and because I think it's really good. I mean, you could just have it in cash, but it could be making cash flow and it's sitting in assets that's appreciating over time.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, no, it's really what it is. When you have cash, I mean, they say the official inflation rate is 3% or whatnot. Now, I think it's more like closer to 8 or 10%. But I mean, we're just seeing prices, they've gone up the last few years. And if you have
yeah,
cash, you're losing the purchasing power of what
yeah,
you have. And that's why I
yeah,
love buying real assets, whether it's real estate or precious metals, or just even things that you need, things you need, like buying it because cash, there's a saying, cash is trash. Like, and it's not that we don't want cash, it's just that it becomes less valuable over time. It becomes something that they can just create more and more of. And I think we haven't really seen the full implications of it. I think over time we may. I mean, look at Argentina right now, they're about 100% inflation. It's like, um,
wow,
that's where you get people start finding, okay, I'm going to put it in alternative currencies, I'm going to put it in other real things or other
right,
stuff. But
right,
that stuff happens. And so there's as the U.S. has continued to decide, our current national debt is over 32 trillion. That the it's going to be, I think, over 52 trillion in 10 years. And so that's what's planned, right? So they plan that. So if that's planned, there's gonna be way more spending, way more that's gonna happen. And
Yeah.
eventually you can't spend and just keep spending and spending and spending without there being a consequence. And that's inflation.
Yeah, no, man, that's real talk. And yeah, now it's even me just getting into passive investing in the last 2 years. A lot of stuff I did active for so long, so it's good to actually have my money working for me, and I don't have to work hard for it. So I am definitely appreciating that the joys of that. So we're going to close out because it's not lessons and blessings. And I think you really tapped it on the head when you said, hey, if you aren't learning something from the trials that you've learned, then any lesson can be turned into a blessing. And that's really the premise of the show at the end of the day. So if you could give us just your biggest lesson that you've learned on this journey of getting into syndication and just getting into real estate investing, what's the biggest lesson you've learned that you've been able to glean from and turn it into a blessing?
I think the biggest lesson really is just about believing in yourself. And it's not just like, oh, hey, I'm just going to believe myself. It's all the personal development stuff and all the work that when you start to develop who you are as a person, it almost always leads to a breakthrough in business or in other areas of life. So as I do Spartan races, I do those competitively. As I do cold plunging or other things like that, stuff like gives me a lot of strength and energy in other areas of my life. And so I think just being willing to be somebody who is somebody who personally grows, because if you personally grow, you will find yourself continually overcoming obstacles, right? If you do it in one area and then you, oh, I did it in this area, I can do it in this area, and it kind of builds confidence in other areas. So I would say don't just commit to wealth, but commit to like a full like prospering in every way, right? Your
Yeah,
health, your soul, and every
yeah,
emotionally, all these things, because they're all important, you know.
yeah, yeah. No, that's real. That's good stuff. Well, tell people how they can get in contact with you.
Yeah, so you can check out my book. It's on Amazon. Fire Yourself up over here, and it also you can get the first chapter free if you want. I realize a freebie. It's at bronsonequity.com. It's a pop up there, so you can actually download the first
Yeah,
couple chapters for free and check it out. And we also have our investor club that's on our website there too. I'm on all the social medias as well. So
good stuff. Love it. Well, thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate it. I'm sure people will take away something from the show, and if not, they will be able to take something away from that book. So until next time, stay blessed.